There's a story about Arthur Jones, who was a British citizen, and he joined the Royal Air Force. The very first night he was in the barracks with 30 other men. He went to bed and he started to squirm a bit, and he thought to himself, "Dare I do what I have normally done all my life? Should I say my prayers?" And he thought to himself, "No, I cannot let other people around me tell me how I should dictate my life." He got out of bed and he knelt down to say his prayers. It takes about 10 minutes for him to say his prayers, and by the time he was finished, he recognized that everybody in the barracks was looking at him. He made the sign of the cross, which then told everybody in the barracks that he was Catholic. He was the only Catholic in the barracks. And then he got up and went to bed. Those 10 minutes of prayer that he said every single night produced a number of different conversations with the other guys in that barracks. They seemed to open up to talk about God and religion and what they were thinking deep inside. Many conversations, he said, came from that. When he was finished and he was being transferred, one of the men in his barracks said to him, "You're the best Christian that I've ever met." The man said to him, Arthur Jones responded, "Well, I might be the most public one that you've seen, but I'm certainly not the best one." Being courageous in our faith takes some doing, some willingness to stick out once in a while. Some say that if you don't get somebody to dislike you because of your beliefs, you're probably not really living a very strong Christianity. Christianity was never designed to be a spectator sport. See, a spectator sport is where we come to the stadium and we watch the game. We sip our beers, we cheer the team, and afterwards we say, "Wasn't that a great game?" No, we sometimes do that in church too. We come to church, we observe, we say, "Wasn't that nice music? Wasn't that a terrible sermon? Wonderful decorations." God doesn't want us to be fans. He wants us to be on the field because Christianity is a full contact sport. Jesus wants to set the earth on fire. That's what he says in the gospel today. You know, the ancients knew a lot more about fire than we do. For us, we've kind of removed ourselves from it quite a bit. It's what they used to light their homes, that simple little flame floating in a bowl of oil. It's what they used to warm themselves on cold nights. It's what they used to cook their meals. They had to tend this fire if they wanted to have a meal in the morning. If they were out taking care of their sheep or their animals, that campfire was very important. It kept away the varmints, protected their investment. People smelled of smoke. Their eyes burned from it when it got enclosed within their huts. They had to prepare ahead of time, so they made sure they had enough wood that was dry so that they could burn it. Their arms were probably marked by burn marks and their fingers by soot. The fire that Jesus wants us to enkindle is an all-consuming kind of fire. It's like a grass fire or a forest fire. If we could be that way with our faith here in the United States, what a different place this would be. But what divisions we experience before we ever get there. The United States of America, 20% of its population on any given Sunday attend Mass, attend a service, any kind of religious service. 20% of the United States population on any given Sunday. You know, truth and popularity never seem to go together. In our Catholic faith, we haven't watered it down. There was a period of time in our church, perhaps, when we did. And there are still some in our church who want us to water it down. But still, the list of things that we believe that rankle the rest of the civilization in which we live make us out to be a little bit crazy. And maybe that's what it means to light a fire. Freedom of choice versus right to life. Our belief in and respect for life from the very first moment of conception. A contraceptive mentality that's taken over us in such a way that the final result has been defined by the Supreme Court, where marriage is no longer anything more than just simply companionship. And they've redefined it to be companions with anybody. Euthanasia has been kind of made to look wonderful by words like mercy killing or death with dignity. The Catholic Church's teaching on the banning capital punishment is something that does not always sit well with every one of our Catholics. And then we enter into this world of gender neutrality now, where we're told that we can define ourselves as male or female. It really doesn't have anything to do with our biology. The Catholic Church has always taught clearly that the truth is to be found in natural law, the way God created it, and in the teachings of Jesus Christ. For instance, his teachings about forgiveness 70 times, 7 times, or how marriage is for life. Cardinal Avery Dulles, a great theologian in our church who I was privileged to know, Christianity, he says, is not healthy unless there is room for the prophetic protest against the abuse of authority. Prophets come in many forms in our society and in our church. We need to look at them and we need to listen to them. Sometimes they rankle us. Sometimes they annoy us. Sometimes they make us mad. Pastors have to listen to those prophets within the parish community who criticize what they do. Good pastors listen to these prophets and then discern. Is it something about faith and morals, or is it just simply something about the administration of the parish? Mother Teresa was one of those prophets in our world. In 1994, she attended the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C., something our present president hasn't found simply enough time to attend all the time. But during that talk, in the presence of Bill and Hillary Clinton, she criticized government-funded abortion. And I looked up the quote that comes from her talk, which is really kind of an amazing quote for her to say in the presence of all of those very elite political people that attend that thing. Here's what she says. America needs no words from me to see how your decision in Roe versus Wade has deformed a great nation. The so-called right to abortion has pitted mothers against their children and women against men. It has shown violence and discord at the heart of the most intimate human relationships. It has aggravated the derogation of the father's role in an increasingly fatherless society. It has portrayed the greatest of gifts, a child, as a competitor, an intrusion, and an inconvenience. It has nominally afforded mothers unfettered dominion over the independent lives of their physically dependent sons and daughters. And in granting this unconscionable power, it has exposed many women to unjust and selfish demands from their husbands and other sexual partners. Human rights are not a privilege conferred by government. They are every human being's entitlement by virtue of his humanity. The right to life does not depend and must not be declared to be contingent on the pleasure of anyone else, not even a parent or a sovereign. She received a standing ovation at the end of her talk, and it said that Bill and Hillary needed to just take a drink from their water bottles at that particular time. Now, Jeremiah, in the first reading today, wanted to save Judah. He wanted to save it from this marauding Babylonian power that was coming at him. And he counseled Zedekiah, the king, to go ahead and pay the tribute to the Babylonians, because if you don't, the Babylonians will destroy this city and will destroy the temple, and we will be at it hand. the commanders of the army did not want to give in to that. They convinced Zedekiah that Jeremiah was crazy to be speaking out against their nation. And so they arrested Jeremiah and they threw him in a cistern where he was expected to starve to death. Eventually, Babylon conquered that city, destroyed it completely, and hauled off into captivity the leading citizens, including Jeremiah himself, and anyone who had any kind of skills became prisoners of the Babylonian Empire. Jeremiah's prophecy was correct, foretelling it like it was, that punishment was as a result of the infidelity and the corruption of the kings that were leading that people. Now, Jesus' prediction today in the gospel about a coming baptism is echoed by Paul, who says, if your struggle against sin, in your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. So he's conceiving the fact that certainly shedding blood was going to be a part of the plan, going to be part of some people's lives. The divisions that Jesus predicted are certainly among us today. Today we commemorate the martyrdom of Maximilian Kolbe, a priest who was killed by the Nazis in the concentration camps of World War II. We can think about the priest who was killed at the altar in France by Islamic militants. We think about Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was killed at the altar in San Salvador in 1980 because he spoke out in favor of the poor and the peasants against a ruling government. He is today up for beatification. In fact, I think he is beatified. So is Maximilian Kolbe. So being a Christian who dares to speak out and raise a fuss about justice will want to be silenced by those who don't want to hear those things. But as the story goes, doesn't it? The song continues. The fire cannot be put out. And it burns in our own country as we find ourselves so divided because I think simply God has been taken out of the equation for any kind of solution. We think we can bring it about all by ourselves. We become, I believe, a kind of Tower of Babel all over again. So at this Mass today, perhaps we can listen to those challenging words of Jesus and say, let us pray to him, but let us witness and be courageous in living our faith. Let us not give way to despair and fear, because sometimes it's times like this that are needed in order to call us back to true fidelity.